Hello, this is Simon from Kiira's Instruments, and that perkele was totally not staged. This video will be the last part of the Vorna Evertune series. We will go through installing frets, finalizing body and neck, finishing and lacquer, and assembling. It's gonna be a long one with lots to do. I'm shaping the body to its final form with an angle grinder, which in woodworking removes material pretty much faster than any other handheld tool. Drilling holes for all the wiring going through the guitar is a nerve-wracking process. I have to use super long drills to reach the pickup switch. My belt sander makes quick work of removing router marks from the body sides. And the spindle sander continues from where the belt sander cannot reach. Here begins the tedious process of removing all the tool marks, rough spots and such from the body, prepping it for the stain and lacquer. And creating a few new tool marks in the process. I'm applying black stain, which acts as a contrasting color and shows me where more sanding is needed. The random orbital sander is a very efficient tool, but leaves circular marks especially on rougher grits. I sanded the guitar with progressively finer papers, each time removing smaller and smaller imperfections. In total, I stain and re-sand the body 3 or 4 times, but I'll spare you guys the repetition. It's time for the final color. I'm using diluted stain not to over-darken the mahogany. And then, for the final time, I'm sanding off most of the stain from the birch top. This leaves highly contrasting wood grain, which the lacquer will bring out even more. Next up, installing frets. I'm starting by resawing the slots and checking that every fret slot is deep enough. The stainless steel frets are hammered in. I'm marking positions for the side dots. Some measurements are fiendishly accurate. For anyone not playing the guitar, these side dots will easily tell the guitarist which fret they're playing. For this guitar, I'm installing Luminlay glow-in-the-dark dots. The material comes as a rod, which I glue into the holes I just drilled. I'm using super glue to fill in any gaps between the fretboard and the fret ends. This will ensure that there are no sharp edges. Belt sander again does quick work of beveling the fret ends most of the way. And then continuing on to manually file down the fret ends and rounding them off. There was a small chip missing from the fretboard end. Off camera, I filled it up with black epoxy, and here I'm filing it down to match. I'm going over the same sanding and staining for the neck as I did for the body. There's a bit more hand sanding required for the neck. The rounded shape doesn't fit well for an orbital sander. The electronics cavity covers get the same treatment. I'm using sandpaper to highlight the contours. I'm using 2-part polyurethane lacquer, which is very durable and won't yellow or crack. For the base coat, I'll use high gloss lacquer to make sure the wood grain doesn't lose contrast. Between applications, I'll do a light sanding to ensure good adhesion of the next coat of lacquer. I'm scraping the side dots open with a utility knife blade. I'm doing this now because I'm a big stupid dummy dum-dum and forgot to do this before lacquer. I'm masking off the fretboard sides, which will stay black. Rest of the guitar will get a brown color. The color is applied by mixing brown stain with the next coat of lacquer. I apply 2 coats of tinted lacquer in total. I'm sanding some of the color off to highlight the shape of the guitar. This took more time than usual due to the thick coat of lacquer on top. I'm roughing up the surface with some Scotch-Brite to prep it up for the next coat of lacquer. And then the maker's mark. I'm using custom water slide decals trapped between lacquer coats. The liquid I apply on the decals is a solvent, which adheres them down. And after a few more coats of semi-gloss lacquer, it's time for the fret level and then the assembly. I'm using a scraper to clean the fretboard from masking tape glue residue and lacquer spray off. I'm rechecking the straightness of the neck before moving on to fretwork. A so-called fret rocker is used to spot any high frets, which are in turn filed down to match. Then the same radius blocks as before are used to match the fretboard radius to the frets themselves. After a quick rundown with the fret rocker, I'm rounding or crowning the frets to their final shape. I'm prepping the frets for polishing with a padded sanding block with progressively finer grits. And then finishing them with a Dremel tool felt pad and polishing compound. The nuts or the upper saddles I make are water buffalo horn. It's a really tough material which will resist wear and tear from the strings for a long time. I'm gluing on a piece of sanding paper to the nut blank. and using that to make a precisely correct size slot for the nut. I'm only using the most high-tech marking tools available, a short pencil. Little by little, the nut is shaped to match the fretboard width. And then rounded off to a smooth finish. The tuner holes gather a lot of lacquer, and I'm reopening them to a 10mm diameter. I'm installing the Goto Magnum Lock automatic locking tuners. The final stain is applied to the fretboard, along with a paraffin oil treatment. I'm drilling extra holes to the body to make room for the pickups. The Evertune pocket needs a little fine-tuning with the Dremel tool. I'm spraying on a conductive paint. This will create a Faraday cage for the electronics and cancel out most of the radio interference. Trust me, it's easier to clean it off afterwards rather than masking off most of the guitar for spraying. Onwards to the assembly. I start by mounting the pickup rings. Then drilling a hole for the ground wire. Mounting the Evertune bridge. Wiring up the pickup selector switch. Wiring up the output jack. Wiring up all the potentiometers. Tidying up and screwing on the covers. Bolting on the neck for the last time. Marking the places for the strings on the nut. And filing them down to size. Stringing the guitar for the first time. And then my camera decided to stop recording. Luckily it was only the last setup and tuning that we missed. Anyways, here is the guitar all finished up. One question remains though. Will it shred? In the hands of a better guitar player than me, definitely. Anyways, thanks for watching.